Could you explain to us who he was? Who was Tutankhamun?
Tutankhamun was a young boy in the age of 9 who became a king. And actually, he died in the age of 19. And he was surrounded by good people around him. The most important was someone, his name is Tanijim. He was his tutor. He taught King Tut wisdom. And also around him, the army commander.
Yeah. Oh, I hate that noise. I hate that noise. We're getting back. We're getting back. And Chris, as far as you're concerned, you watched it last night.
I did.
Playing fast and loose with the facts, or?
In some ways, I think some elements of the story are not based in the historical reality, but I think the bigger picture, it's all about conveying Carter and Carnarvon's thought processes and what led them to be digging where they were, and of course eventually leads them to the tomb of King Tut. And you know, I think in the big picture, the facts are in place. Things unfold in the way that you would expect them to. There are things that Egyptologists like me could nitpick about and be pedantic about, but I think
it is
in general
it's a drama,
terms,
not a documentary.
It is, yeah, exactly, yeah.
What do we know about Carter?
We know a lot about Carter. He started working in Egypt as a teenager in around about 1890, 1891. His life is fairly well documented through letters, and because he was an archaeologist, of course, it's his business to be leaving behind lots of notes, letters, photographs, this kind of thing. So we know a lot about his career leading up to the time that's in the show.
But he wasn't your stereotypical type of character, was he, back then? It was a very rich man's game, in fact, to go to Egypt to dig.
It was. This is a time of transition, actually. In the 19th century in particular, it was the way that things worked, that if you had enough money and you fancied it, you could go to Egypt and you could dig things up and bring them home. By the time Carter and Carnarvon were working, that was beginning to come to an end, and in some ways, Carnarvon is the last of these sort of wealthy aristocrats who wanted to do this. And in some ways, the discovery of the tomb of King Tut brought that to an end, but it's the last great discovery of that kind.
Well, it took them 12 years to find it. I think it was interrupted by the First World War.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
So that moment of revelation, the finding of the tomb itself intact, hadn't been raided or plundered, must have been the most shocking thing to discover.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in some ways, although any sort of drama, historical drama that's rooted in archaeology is always going to try and, you know, dramatise things, but nothing really, I think, could supersede what really actually happened. And although, as we know from the film yesterday evening, Carter very much had it in mind that he was going to find this tomb, the tomb of this particular king, and you know that it might have been intact. I don't think anybody really could have had any expectation that it was going to be as spectacular as it was.
Mm-hmm. I suppose we've got to ask, is there another one in the Valley of the Kings or somewhere in Egypt? Is there another one of those tombs?
Well, there's plenty of archaeological work going on all the time. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of archaeological projects working every year, and they're all finding things. And what's really intriguing, you know, when we're thinking about whether or not there would be a spectacular discovery like that, is that there are royal individuals from that same period whose burials have not certainly been identified. So there's enough of a kind of a gap in the evidence to suggest that there might still be something. And it's worth remembering as well that what Carter was doing was trying to clear the valley down to the floor to make sure that there was nothing left. And in fact, when he discovered the tomb of King Tut, he hadn't finished that job and never did. So there are still parts of the Valley of the Kings in that area that have never been dug.